Hi guys, yet another 60 frames per second video. You're probably getting sick of them, and I wouldn't blame you. However, it is a fairly important topic. It is the topic everyone is talking about on YouTube, and it's pretty important to my channel as well. Now, what I'm actually doing is a test more for myself. I want to see the difference between 30 frames a second and 60 frames a second on something that moves fairly smoothly, as I'm doing right now. I want to see it side by side. So what you should be seeing on your screen right about now, if all goes well, is half the screen 30 frames a second and the other half 60 frames a second, so that we can see the difference, see if we can detect the difference on the YouTube player. I know I'll be able to detect it on the source. Will I be able to detect it on the player? That's the big question. I think so. I'm fairly sure. But I thought it would be quite a nice test. That's what I'm doing. I'm also going to clear up a couple of issues that came up in the comments of previous videos. For example, the last video I did, I moved very, very fast. It was a loud mission, and I am using a very fast build. As you can see now, even though I'm trying to be smooth, my character really does move. Really can move. So this is stealth mode, and he's still bombing along. No sprinting, but there you go. But I'm trying to be smooth now. So that was an issue in the last video. Some people found it very distracting, and some people didn't even wait to the end of the video before they'd already decided something was wrong, and I could explain to them that it was not. So, the other thing is screen tearing. Some people said there was screen tearing. Now, I can tell you there was very little screen tearing in the source, but there was a little. I mean, it was a tiny amount because I wasn't using VSync by sheer accident. I am now. However, I also saw screen tearing in the video playback that was far greater than the screen tearing on the source that I uploaded. Which means there is some tearing in the player itself, which is unfortunate. Not sure why that is the case, but it did seem to be the case. I noticed some screen tearing. Different videos, different amounts. And for example, I even noticed it on the Fallout New Vegas video. And I can tell you that the Fallout New Vegas video should have no tearing because I used VSync. And the source has 0 screen tearing. So, any screen tearing you saw on that one was due to the player completely. So as you can see, there are issues with the player at different people's systems. So that is still an issue. I've also noticed a lot of positive feedback from the Fallout New Vegas video. More people watch the 60 frames a second one than watch the 30 frames a second one. I'm guessing a lot of them just watched it in 30 FPS anyway, because it does seem that the other browsers are now getting the option to do 30 frames a second. That's not because the browser's changed anything, that is because YouTube got wise and enabled 30 frames a second on videos where the browser was not set to play 60. I'm still thinking that very, very quickly there will be some plugins available for the other browsers that will make YouTube videos play at 60 frames a second. I think it'll only be a matter of days before they arrive. However, in the meantime, you have the option to watch the 1080p and 720p at 30 frames a second on those browsers. Now, someone else actually said it should be an option to actually have it play 30 frames a second rather than 60, even if you're on Chrome, and I happen to agree. There are still some people finding the 60 frames a second a little performance problematic. They get stutters, it doesn't look as good as it should, and they would rather watch it in 30 frames a second, but if they're using Chrome, they actually can't. They've got to watch it in 60 frames a second unless they drop the resolution to 480 or below, and I can tell you 480 on the new 60 frames a second videos looks very bad to me. Very, very bad, very stuttery. So I don't think people were that keen on it. Yeah, so results have varied quite a lot. Some people have watched the 60 frames a second and they say they just do not like it. They find it makes them feel sick. And that's another issue I would like to address, because some people attacked those people and said, you don't feel more sick with more frames a second, you moron. It's when you have less frames a second. And please don't do that. Don't attack people for what is your own preference. and your own opinion. It is not true that more frames a second will make you less sick. And I can tell you that from first-hand experience. I have told this story several times on the live stream, and I'll tell it on this recording now, but back in the Quake 2 days, I was playing on a machine that got a maximum of 20 frames a second. And I do mean a maximum. And when I upgraded to get a Voodoo 2 card, one of my first 3DFX cards, my frame rate jumped to 45, and the game looked gorgeous. And I started, in fact, it was a jump from 20 frames a second at 640 by 400 resolution to 45 frames per second or more at 800 by 600 resolution, because I got 2 Voodoo 2 GFX cards. Ooh. And I can tell you now, it looked gorgeous, and I played 10 times better. I mean, my frag count went out of the roof. It really did. I played so much better. But after about 15 to 20 minutes of playing, I felt physically ill. And not slightly. I mean, quite horribly nauseous. Like I was seasick or something. Like I was on a roller coaster. I felt ill. So, it is not a matter of the higher the better for everyone. It simply is not. And statements to the opposite are just blatantly false. They're wrong. They are your subjective opinion. You prefer it faster. Not everyone does. And it is not them being stupid. It is just the fact that they are not used to that frame rate. Your brain gets used to a certain frame rate. And that's all this whole frame rate issue is. It's nothing to do with what your eyes can see and what your eyes can see a hell of a lot more than any computer is going to give it. They really can. The question is, how many frames a second does it take for your brain to be fooled into thinking it's seeing fluid motion? That is all it is. And the standard figure is, 30 frames a second will fool your brain into thinking it's fluid motion. But the simple fact is, there is no hard number. It varies person to person. And as technology advances and we keep getting smoother and smoother images, and we get TVs that can do 100 images a second, they have 100 hertz and higher resolution, we're finding ourselves really getting quite picky. And yes, once upon a time, 24 frames a second at low resolution was perfectly fine and looked realistic, and now it doesn't. Now we all have high-def TVs and are looking at 100 hertz and thinking, I want it faster. That's just how it is. There's nothing we can do about it. As we get used to smoother games, smoother movies, we become accustomed to them and demand more. That's how it is. So, please don't attack people for having a different preference. I mean, if they state clearly that 30 frames a second is demonstrably better or something, or more cinematic, yes, correct them. Because what they mean is it's better for them and is more cinematic for them. But don't attack them if they say, I prefer 30 frames a second. Because when they say, I prefer, they are just stating their own preference, not asserting a fact. So, let's get that out of the way. What else came up in the comments? I think that was mostly it. I think people need to calm down a little bit here. There's some people getting a bit hysterical about this, treating it like some great conspiracy from YouTube, or some people talking about it like it's the end of my channel if I go 60 frames a second. It's like, if you go 60 frames a second, I will unsubscribe because I won't be able to watch your videos. If I feel that many people cannot watch my videos in 60 frames a second, I will not upload them. And indeed, I've already recorded several videos with footage for some games, and they're 30 frames a second. So most of the videos you see in the next week will be 30 frames a second anyway. If I record something in 60 frames a second, for example, New Vegas, which I thought about, I would possibly post it once more as a 30 frames a second as well. Obviously, I won't do that long term. I will not do that long term. It's just not feasible. But if this is just going to be a few days before 60 frames a second is perfectly acceptable on every browser, every platform, and nobody has a problem with it, I could do 1 or 2 more videos where I double the video count, do a 30 frames a second version as well. But But let's not get dramatic. I'm not just going to switch to 60 frames a second and leave people unable to watch my videos. I'm not going to do that. That is not going to happen. At the same time, I'm not going to ignore 60 frames a second because one or two people refuse to, whatever it is they refuse to do. Because you get people, oh, I refuse to use Chrome just to watch 60 frames a second. I've got very little sympathy with that kind of attitude. As long as you were able to watch 30 frames a second on Firefox, I don't see any problems. If you're somehow deeply offended by the mere fact that a video is 60 frames a second, get over it, is my basic opinion on that one. So, you know, I am obviously going to be doing 60 frames a second videos sometime in the future. The question literally is when, and the answer to that is when I feel the vast majority of people who are willing to make some effort are able to watch my videos in 60 frames a second, or at the very least watch them in 30 frames a second without it being a pain. That is my current stance. So there you go. That was my next ramble on the 60 frames a second issue, along with a bit of a test. So I am curious as to how this is going to look on the video. I think maybe I should look at some different things. I've been running around. How about the floor? Maybe I should go loud. Go loud and get a bit of mayhem going.
Get your game face on, buddy. Get down on the ground.
Good thinking. Take hostages. They'll be more careful coming in.
Can't resist this. Are you coming or not? Did I get the key card? The key card. Hey guys, how you doing? I'm here to rob your bank.
Watch out for the cops.
Okay, anyway, thank you for listening to the ramble, and I will see you guys later.
He'll be back. Keep your eyes out for the new location.